In this video, we are going to learn about the four but not least functions of the roles that are played by blood in our body. Before we start the lesson, I will take you back to the transport system in plants. Remember when we were talking about the plant transport system in plants, we identified the main component of the system as water. And it is water which would carry dissolved minerals from the soil, absorbed by the root hairs, from the soil absorbed by the root hairs to the areas where the minerals are needed. So, these minerals on their own, they cannot access themselves into the plant, but they do it through dissolving in water, and then water is absorbed or taken up by the root hairs into the plant. These mineral salts will be needed in certain areas of production. It is water again that would take manufactured food like glucose, like starch, from areas of production, for example the leaves, to the areas of storage or the areas where it is needed. And we also identified that water also provides the support system of the plant. That is what we learned about the water as a transport system in plants. So today we want to look at a similar asset like water, but this time in animals. So we are going to talk about the functions of blood in animals, or rather the function of blood specifically in human beings. So blood plays four functions in a human being. So the first function is the regulatory function. The regulatory function is also known as homeostasis. That is the proper biological term for the regulatory function. The second function that blood plays in a human being is the protective function. The third function that blood plays in a human being is the transport function. And the fourth but not least function that blood plays in a human being is the support function. Okay, so these are the four roles that blood plays. These are the four functions that blood plays in a human being. But the four functions are not the only functions that blood plays in a human being. There could be four, but at this stage, these are the four that we are expected to know. Right. So I will begin by talking about the function number one, which is homeostasis, or the regulatory function. So the regulatory function is mostly played by water and the liver. So blood transports water between the blood and the tissues. Remember, for tissues to function, they need water. And this water is transported by the blood. So the blood, it has got a percentage of water regulation for the purpose of transporting water to the required points, which are the tissues. The liver generates heat. Heat is made and the liver. So blood transports heat from the liver to the skin. So the point of manufacture is the liver, and the point of exit or the point of excretion is the skin. So this process manages to regulate heat. In other words, heat is kept to an optimum level. There is a required amount of heat. So the excess heat is excreted by the skin. So if we did not have the point of excretion, then we would obviously have excessive heat and things would go wrong at that point. So blood also maintains pH in the tissues. And now we go to the second function of blood, which is the protective function. The protective function of blood is mostly played by platelets. It's mostly played by platelets and plasma proteins. Okay, so platelets and plasma proteins are the ones that give our bodies a clotting mechanism. So we have got a clotting mechanism. We will all agree that when you get a bruise or a cut, yes, there will be bleeding that goes on, but at some point the bleeding stops. So in our blood there are platelets and plasma proteins which provide this clotting mechanism. So this clotting mechanism, when blood clots, remember when we cut ourselves or when we have a hard bruise on our skin, what it means that bruise or that cut is a potential entry point for disease-causing organisms. So our blood is intelligent enough to have platelets and plasma proteins that will clot and close that particular part so that the disease-causing organisms do not find entry into our bodies. So blood also plays a very important role in a protective function, right? On the same second function of blood, which is the protective function, we also have got phagocyte cells. So these phagocyte cells, what they do is they engulf the disease-causing organisms. We also have lymphocytes, and these lymphocytes, they produce or they secrete specific organisms in form of antibodies that will fight against the disease-causing organism. So we have got, I said number one, we have got phagocytes, and then B, we have got lymphocytes. Okay. These are found in our blood for the purpose of playing a protective function. So the phagocytes, what they do when they identify a disease-causing organism in our bodies, they engulf it. So the disease-causing organism comes this way, like my marker pen, and the phagocytes, they engulf it, right? When the disease-causing organism is engulfed or captured by a phagocyte, a lymphocyte plays the role of manufacturing and releasing a specific antibody to fight that particular disease. So that is the protective function of blood. The third function of blood is playing the role of transport. Blood plays the role of transport. So we have got soluble products for digestion or absorption. These soluble products are mainly glucose, vitamins, right? So this glucose and vitamins, it needs to be transported from areas of production to the areas where they are needed. So for example, these soluble food products will be transported from the gut to the liver. Okay, so this is where they are manufactured, and this is where they are processed, or this is where they are used. Then when they are processed at the liver, they are then circulated by blood to the areas where they are necessary. Okay. The other role that is played still under the transport system of blood, the transport function of blood, is circulating waste products or transporting waste products. So the waste products that we have is urea. We also have lactate. So these waste products are transported to the liver and the kidney. So we say waste products, we've got lactate, we have got urea. Urea will be processed, will be transported by blood, right? Processed in the kidney, then to the bladder for excretion. Lactate is transported by blood to the liver, where it is processed and then it is transported for secretion. Right. Blood also transports hormones. Still under transport. We also have got transportation of hormones. Hormones like insulin. We have got the transportation of hormones like insulin. So we have got insulin as a hormone. Insulin is made by the glands. Glands will make insulin, and then it is transported to the required organs. So from the glands, it will go to the required organs. That is the other function of blood under transport. Now we go to the last function of blood, which is the support system. I'll take you a little bit to plants. We say that the other role that is played by water in plants is supporting the plant, to keep the plant upright. Water plays a role in keeping the plant upright. Now, in this, in human beings, the support system is mostly found. The good example is in males, right? For the penis to remain erect, there has to be continuous supply of blood. So, inside the penis of a male, inside the penis, actually, let's forget about gender. So, inside the penis, there are spongy spaces. They are spongy spaces. And these spongy spaces are meant to be filled with blood. So what happens is when a penis is erect, what would have happened is blood would have entered those spongy spaces and filled them. And then the penis becomes erect. And when the blood flows out of those spongy spaces, then the erection will obviously go away. So those are the four roles, those are the four functions that blood plays in animals, or those are the four functions that blood plays in human beings.